My first memories are of Virginia, Minnesota, and I was 5 years old and I entered kindergarten and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I loved every minute of first grade. And then I got a teacher in second grade and I didn't like her. So I was happy when my family decided to move to California at that point. My family, we have had lots of family in California. My grandma Mary and my auntie Bernice and lots of family. So it wasn't like we were going from one known place to an unknown place. It was a comfortable move. And I was a social person, not giddy and have to be in a big crowd, but I didn't really like school that much. The one good memory I remember was when we started kindergarten, and that was one thing I loved. And the teacher had us all get up and stand by our desks and move aside and make a line and put our arms down, and we'd go like this, and we'd see, we see Jumbo bring his trump, see Big Jumbo swing his trump. And it was the funnest thing we did in kindergarten. I loved it. Miss Binney was my kindergarten teacher, and I loved her. Miss Chisholm was my second grade teacher. Miss Hovland was my dreaded third teacher. And I don't know why I didn't like her. She was just so strict. And the first two teachers loved me, and she didn't love me, so I didn't love her. Then we moved to California, and my brother started kindergarten here, I think. And I started this school down here in the corner, the elementary school here. So I went there 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Then I went to the junior high school where Opa was. And then we moved to Paradise, California, and it was a horrible place for my mother. Her marriage broke up at that time, I think. And we moved to Minnesota, and that's where I went for 10th, 11th, 12th, and 2 years of JC. That was my education. My teachers always said, "You're such a bright student. Why don't you take learning seriously?" And I said, "It's just too bothersome." It wasn't something I enjoyed doing. I liked being out climbing trees and jumping off garage roofs into piles of leaves. I'm just a common person. I just never had any big aspirations to do anything but to be happy and try not to make other people unhappy. So that's kind of what I am as I sit here now, a person who tries to make people feel good because they know I'm caring for them, even though I might not be doing anything with them or saying anything. They know that if I'm with you, it's because I love you and want to make you happy. So that's my goal in life, I think. What I really always wanted to do was get married and have babies. I really wanted to do that. So when I was about 12 years old, maybe, 6th grade, it was 6th grade, so about 12 years, my dad said, "Joni, you're a pretty little girl, and the boys are starting to come around to the house, and what I want you to do is look at that person and see what you like in that male person, and remember that, and just make a list in your brain. You don't have to write it down about what you liked about him. And then when you have another person you meet, what did you like most about him? And that went on until he said, and then when you fall in love, you'll have a good sort of values to back you up for your decision. And that's ultimate. I dated in high school, and I had lots of boyfriends, and I never had one that ever caused me any problems whatsoever. But when I met Gary, he just had lots of good things that I liked and admired. He was steady. He knew how to keep a job. My dad wasn't steady. He's always flitting here or there, doing heavy construction work and moving us out of the home where we were loved and secure into the vast unknown. And it was always a challenge to be with my dad for that reason. But he was a wonderful father. He showed us love every single time he'd look at us. He was so loving. And he was a good husband to my mother, except he had wanderlust and my mother didn't. And so that caused problems for us. It trained me to accept wanderlust because I married a man who's taken me all over the world. A lot of my great-grandparents lived at a lake, Ely Lake, so we spent a lot of time at the lake in the summer, and I loved it. I loved it. I always have loved the water. And ended up living on a boat for 2 years because I loved the water. Minnesota had a very good educational reputation at that time and still does. And so the kids that I associated with were really smart kids and weren't kids that got in trouble. I get in my own kind of trouble, but I never was in a gang or any group of people who caused problems. I remember we used to live here in Berkeley, 2 blocks away in a house that's now a big apartment building. But my girlfriend Shirley and I decided we were going to try to see what it's like to be smoking. So we'd get cigarettes and we'd try them but we'd try again. But I had the cigarettes hiding in my closet and my mother found them. And she said, "Where'd you get these?" And I said, "I don't know. And my dad came home and she said, "I found these in the closet." Joni was hiding them. My dad said, "Oh, Joni, here, if you're going to smoke, don't hide it. Don't hide it." And that made me say, "Ew, I don't like it, so I won't hide it." And that was then. I never touched a cigarette ever after. I never learned how. My dad was really smart, and he'd sit and talk to me, and he always made such sense. He was so intelligent. He knew everything about how streetlights work. He knew everything about how semi-truck works. He was very into heavy equipment, and it caused him to move around many, many places in his career. And that was hard for my mom because every time she'd get a little nest made, he'd say, "Well, oh, this big opportunity, I can make 3 times the money I'm making now." And she'd have to go along with it, or she did choose to go along with it. So it was a disruptive childhood, but it was a childhood who had 2 parents who knew how to prove they loved you. They were great, great people. We just made some non-wise decisions. But when we were living in Paradise, we had a really hard. My dad was floundering financially, and his car was confiscated because he didn't make the car payment that month or several months. And my mom said, "That's it. I'm not going to live in Paradise anymore. I'm moving back home to Minnesota." And my dad said, "I can understand that, and we're going to work things out." And so she went to Minnesota, and he went to Pocatello, Idaho, and worked on a big job. And he was coming home one night after having a drink after work, and he caused a crash that killed a young boy, 17 years old, my age, and nothing was right for him after that. He just fell apart, and I know he died in another crash at another time. I think, I don't know. It's been so long, and I haven't dwelt on it. I think you have to face reality that there is sadness in life, but you can't dwell on it because it'll take you down. That's how I feel. So I try to focus, not with high aspirations, but just a pleasant life for me and for the people I love. And if I meet a stranger walking down the sidewalk, I'll always say hello to that stranger, just because maybe he had a fight with his wife and he was really feeling bad, or maybe she had to go get her kid from school because the kid was acting up. So I always try to make any impression be a good impression, and it's not because I need that. I need to give it. So I think I'm a giving person. I don't ask much of my family, except now when I'm dying of cancer, slowly but surely, my family is very highly impacted. But no one's complaining, and they're taking care of their dad with dignity. And I'm having a good life.
I thought your father died in that fatal accident.
I guess he did. He died in that accident, and the young man died too.
Yeah.
And then the family of the young man started to sue my mother, and my mother said, "I have no money in my life. There's nothing. I'm living with my sister, who's totally paralyzed from infantile paralysis on one side of her body, and and my father, who's 80 years old, and he's dying as he sits here on the couch." And so those people backed off. There was no suit filed because my mother had nothing. And Virginia, Minnesota has a care system that's very good for people who want it. My mother didn't want it. She said, "Take that blue card that says you're going to give me money. Take that blue card and give it to somebody else. I don't want anybody's help. I'm going to do this by myself." And she did. She took care of my aunt, my grandpa, till they died. She took care of Don and me. She went to work at a shirt factory, and she worked hard. She was she was the highest paid employee because they did piecework. So she was a status symbol in her career, and it's a very small status symbol, but it was important to her that she was the best in her job.
You said that both of your parents were really good at demonstrating love. How did your mother demonstrate love to you?
The way I demonstrate love to you, the same way. Just letting you know that you are a gift I was given, and I will cherish you forever. And I was a gift for her, especially after Daddy died, because I really shaped up. I got over my sassiness, and I was patient with her, and she was tactile. My brother's widow said, "I loved your mother more than my own mother." She said my mother couldn't be anywhere near as wonderful as your mother is, and she was wonderful.
And you told me that your father was in an airplane crash, and that affected his ability to function as well.
Yeah.
Like, what was the story around a plane crash?
He loved aviation, and he took lessons, and he passed his test with flying colors, and he used it to go hop to different construction sites and show people what was going on. But unfortunately, his airplane flew a little too low and hit a wire, was strung somewhere, and the plane crashed, and I think a person in that plane died also. And my dad had a compound fracture of the skull, and we were in Alabama, where we had no family, nobody. So people, it was the goodness of their heart, took my mother, brother, and me in while my dad was in the hospital with his compound fractured skull. And he then ultimately died in the car crash, that car crash. So he dumped an airplane and he dumped a car. But he was a good man. I loved him dearly. He just didn't function well. I don't know why.
How long did he live after the airplane crash? Do you remember?
How long did he live?
Yeah. So he had the airplane crash, and you said that affected his ability to function.
Yeah.
How much longer did he live like that?
He was in the hospital just a short while, and then some good Samaritans took us into their home and put us up. And he did recover from that, but my mom said he never was the same. He was impacted by that accident, so he just couldn't function well anymore. So it was a sad ending for him,
right,
and a sad ending for my mother, and it was a sad ending for me because I told Lisa, I think, I wrote a letter to my dad who was in Pocatello, Idaho, and my mom and I are in Minnesota, and I said, "You should be ashamed of yourself for not sending Mom any money, any help of any kind, and you gave birth to me and to my brother, and you've done nothing for us to help us, and I'm really, really upset about that." And I wrote the letter. I didn't show it to my mother because I knew it would stress her and I hurt her. And I mailed the letter, and the next thing you know, he's dead. So I went into therapy after that, and many years after that, actually, or a lot of years after that. And I went into therapy, and I told the therapist that I thought I killed my father. And she said, "What makes you think you had that capacity? You didn't have that capacity to kill your father. He killed himself." And so that took some of the grief off from me. But the sad thing is, after he read that letter, he wrote a letter to my mother, and it came to the house, and I took it, put it in the garbage. And I did it because I knew it was going to hurt her. And she was hurting enough. She didn't need anything new on it. because he died during that process that it came to the house. And
Did you read the letter?
No. And the therapist said, "Why didn't you read that letter?" I said, "Because it wasn't addressed to me." And but yeah, I wrote the letter, and it came to the house, and he died before it got to our house. And when it came to me, the mailbox, I took it and threw it in the trash. So that's been something I regret, but I did it, and I can't live regretting it.
Right.
I just have to realize that it was something I did that really wasn't right. But I don't think it hurt my life. I don't think it hurt my mother any more than if she'd received that letter and if I'd given it to her. So I've had trauma in my life, and I work really hard at not causing it. Therapy helps. Therapy helps. Daddy and I wouldn't be married if we hadn't had therapy.
How did that help you?
The therapist that we had was a woman, and she she took Dad's side half the time. It was never you did this, that was bad. You did that, that was bad. It was she showed us what we were doing to our marriage to destroy it, and we were just not honoring each other as nice people. We were just too uptight with each other. So that was a good thing.
Did that help you honor one another?
Yeah. I could look for the good things in him rather than the negative things. And that was helpful. And it's relevant to this very day. If there's something that's happening and you don't like it, just say, "I don't like that, but it's your choice." And
if you were to make a list of the good things about Opa, like what would be on that list?
well, good things about Opa, he's a gentle soul. He's gentle. He might snap at me, but I snap at him. It doesn't mean he's not a good soul. He's intelligent. He's willing to try new things. He doesn't get in a rut. He doesn't bond with friends very much. Like, I've got lots of lady friends, but he doesn't have any gentleman friends. So I think that having you is close to having a friend, a male friend. And besides that, all our friends are dying. The ones that were relevant are not around anymore. So, but I think Daddy's a happy man. I think he's satisfied with how he turned out. I know he's satisfied. He's accomplished a hell of a lot in his life, and I admire him. I think he's receptive to advice. When we were pregnant with you, he was in college, and his mother says, "Well, you're going to have to drop out now. You're going to have to get a job." And I said, I didn't say to her, I said to him, "You're going to go to college. You're going to finish at least this school. And if you don't go to the university, that's okay. But you're going to finish being in this junior high school, junior college. And we'll manage with the baby some way or other." And we did. We managed our money nicely. And the government gave him $98 a month, I think it was, and our rent was $60, so he had to work part-time to buy food and lodging, but he's always been very steady. He's very steady, and that's what I didn't have with my dad. And it is not to diminish the love I had for my dad. I adored him, but he didn't offer me the stability. But he did tell me to choose wisely, find the good in each person, and then when you make a decision, weigh the options. And I was 12 years old then, and I still remember him sitting on the side of the bed and talking to me.
So if you were to make a list of some of your best qualities, what would be on that list?
That I tend to keep my home in order the way I wanted. I mean, it might not be for everybody, but I like my home. I do a good job with homemaking for me. I like being a homemaker. I like cooking. I like washing clothes. I like folding clothes. I like people. And I have a thought that there's something in every person. There's one thing that is very special. And I think that the best thing to have is the ability to love, to give and receive. I think that's the most important thing. And I get love, and I get stability from this man, and you, and a dog on my lap.
Yeah. Seems like at this stage of your lives, being 90 years old, like the family's really come together.
Yeah. And I recently, within the last year anyway, you said people wonder why I like to be with my family. Why do you like to be with your parents? And they don't understand how people can really like their parents, and you do. So that's a gift you've given us, and we try to give back.
Me and the sisters, like, you know, Janine lives here, and Judy moved here from Colorado. So we really are organizing around being together.
Yeah, they're just great people. We lost our little Teri, but she'd be right in there if she were not in a peaceful place now. That was hard, losing a child.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, you came. You were here a day before she died, I think. And then the next day you came down, and I thought, why are you coming two times in a row? And you said, we've got bad news, and Teri died. And it's like a slap in the face. It just startled you. How can that be? But it wasn't by choice. She didn't do it because she wanted to. She didn't do it because we were tired of her. It was just like, maybe I can get along in life without this finger, but it will never be the same.
I can see you still miss her. That's a grief that never goes away, huh?
What else would you like to ask?
So it sounds like a lot of the time it was just the three of you, your mom and your brother and you, and your father would be off working somewhere. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mama was the stability in the family, and she was the caretaker. And if anybody needed help, she was there.
How much younger than you was your brother?
He was 4 years younger. And he was the product of a twin birth. And the twin was dead when he was born. So they didn't even tell my mother for years. My family has a thing about keeping secrets, and I have lived to do the same thing sometimes. My brother was a sweet kid, but he lost his daddy when our father, was 12 years old, and it was hard for him. And we were in Minnesota there, and my mom thought, well, he's getting into little trouble, like shooting out street lights at night and things like that. He needs a father. He needs a man in his life. And my grandfather, he's probably dead by then, and certainly wouldn't have been any kind of a father to him. But anyway, my mom said, I think we better move to California, because you've got your Uncle Rob Tollison, and you've got two uncles who could be father figures for him in his life, and maybe give him guidance. So that's when we left Minnesota in 1954. He never finished high school. He was a gentle soul, and I was really a bossy broad, so I never could find much to admire in him. But I realized that he was not a bad person. He just kind of had a path that could lead to being in trouble. He started dying, his body was dying, and he was trying to stop smoking, and he was trying to stop drinking, but he was secretly drinking behind his wife's back. So he was diminishing his life, and he ended up in the hospital. And in the hospital, he took Chris's hand, and he said, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be able to go. I'm not going to be able to be healed. I'm just going to die. But I do love you. And so she had that nice final moment with him that made it easier for her to live. So I was glad he was able to give her love even at the end.
And they had two young kids.
Mm-hmm. Had two kids. They had two kids. One died in a car crash. And I don't know what the other one's doing. He's well employed, and he's well married. But there's still a male Trenholm in our line living. I'm not comfortable speaking about myself. I don't enjoy doing it, but I appreciate the effort and the impact of it.